Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
James always believed trust was the foundation of everything. After 12 years married to Rachel, he was sure he knew every detail about the woman he shared his life with. She was organized, ambitious, determined, the exact kind of person he admired. As a marketing manager at a mid-sized agency, Rachel knew precisely how to sell an image, how to craft a compelling narrative. Maybe that's why James never suspected a thing. She was just too good at what she did. The project in the Colorado mountains came out of nowhere. James's company, a software startup specializing in cybersecurity systems, had landed a major contract with a luxury hotel chain. The job required 3 weeks of total isolation at a mountain resort, far from distractions, focused entirely on finalizing the code for a revolutionary data protection system. James hesitated at first. 3 weeks away from home, away from Rachel, felt like a long time. But she insisted he take it. "Honey, this is the opportunity you've been waiting for," Rachel said, holding his hands as they talked in the kitchen. "You've worked so hard for this. 3 weeks will fly by, I promise. I'll be fine here, taking care of everything. When you get back, we'll celebrate properly." She smiled in that way that always melted his defenses. James agreed. After all, Rachel was right. This project could change everything, for the company, for his career, for their future together. He packed his bags, kissed his wife goodbye on Monday morning, and drove 5 hours to the secluded resort, surrounded by pines and silence. The first few days were intense. James and his small team, just him and 2 junior developers, worked 16 hours a day. The resort offered comfortable but basic accommodations, no TV, and internet access limited strictly to work. It was exactly the kind of environment James needed to dive deep into the code. Rachel sent him short messages every day: "Miss you, good luck today, thinking of you." Nothing over the top, nothing forced, just enough to keep their connection alive. By the second week, James started noticing something odd. Rachel's messages became even more spaced out. Sometimes she took hours to reply to simple questions. When he called, she'd answer in a rush, always with plausible excuses: important meetings, difficult clients, heavy traffic. James tried to ignore the growing unease in his chest. Rachel was busy, he knew that. She had her own career, her own responsibilities. It wasn't fair to expect constant attention just because he was away. But James's mind started wandering during work breaks. Small details he'd never noticed before began piling up in his memory. Rachel spending more time on the phone in the weeks before his trip. Her going to the gym at different hours. New underwear he didn't recognize. A different perfume. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, but enough to plant a seed of doubt. It all changed on Wednesday morning of the second week. James was sitting on the cabin's porch, sipping coffee and reviewing lines of code on his laptop, when his phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. He automatically smiled before even reading it. "When are you coming back?" The question seemed innocent, almost affectionate. James quickly typed, "Still 9 days to go." "Why? Missing me?" He hit send with a smiling emoji. Less than 3 minutes later, the phone vibrated again. Another message from Rachel. James opened it expecting something sweet, maybe "dying to see you" or something like that. What he saw made the world stop. "He's not back until next Friday. We'll have the house to ourselves until then, love. Can't wait to feel you again." James read the message 3 times. Then 4. 5. The words didn't change. His brain tried to process, rearrange, find some alternate explanation that made sense. Maybe it was a message to a friend about some plan. Maybe he referred to someone else. But no. There was no denying it. "He's not back until next Friday." James was coming back next Friday. The house to ourselves, their house. Love, not meant for a friend. Rachel had sent it to the wrong number. The message was for her lover, but thanks to some cruel twist of fate, it landed in the hands of her betrayed husband. James felt something cold spread through his chest, down his arms, all the way to his fingertips. It wasn't anger yet. It was worse, a kind of icy void, as if a fundamental part of reality had just been erased. He looked around the porch, at the snow-covered mountains, at the impossible blue sky, and everything felt unreal, like a fake movie set. The phone buzzed again. Rachel, sorry, love, wrong message. Was talking to Karen about a client. But yes, I miss you. Her pathetic attempt to cover up the mistake was almost comical. Karen. Rachel didn't even have a friend named Karen. And what kind of client conversation involved feeling you again? James didn't reply. He just kept staring at the screen, feeling nausea rise in his throat. 20 minutes later, another message, honey? Everything okay? You disappeared. James took a deep breath. His mind, trained to solve complex logic and programming problems, kicked into gear. Responding in anger would be a mistake. Confronting her now, from a distance, without concrete proof beyond a text she was already trying to deny, would be pointless. She'd deny it, invent excuses, erase traces. No. James needed more. He needed irrefutable proof. He typed, sorry, was in a meeting. Everything's great here. Miss you too. The reply came instantly, red heart, love you. James locked his phone and closed his eyes. Love. She claimed to love him while planning rendezvous with another man in the house they'd bought together, in the bed they shared. The hypocrisy was so brutal it was almost impressive. That afternoon, James left the cabin, telling his team he had to deal with a personal emergency. He drove 40 minutes to the nearest town and found a private investigation office on a side street. The investigator, a man named Marcus who looked like a former cop, listened to everything without interruption. Happens more often than you'd think, Marcus said, tapping his fingers on the desk. Messages sent to the wrong person. It's the most common mistake. Lucky for you, unlucky for her. He paused. How much time do you have? I get back next Friday. 9 days. Good. I'll need your home address, a photo of her, and her basic routine if you know it. I can have preliminary results in 2 or 3 days, full confirmation in 5. James provided all the details. A photo of Rachel smiling on a trip they'd taken the previous year. She looked beautiful, happy, radiant. It was hard to reconcile that image with the woman betraying him. Marcus promised complete discretion and daily reports. The next few days were the longest of James's life. He tried to focus on work, but the code on the screen blurred together. He reread the same lines 10 times without processing them. Marcus sent daily encrypted email updates, confirmation of suspicious movement patterns, identification of the apartment where Rachel met someone, license plates of a man's car visiting their house. The following Monday, 6 days after hiring the investigator, Marcus called. I've got everything you need. You're not gonna like it, but you'll want to see it. James drove back to town once more. Marcus placed a black folder on the table and opened it slowly, like revealing evidence of a crime, which, technically, it was. The photos were crystal clear. Rachel entering an apartment James didn't recognize. Rachel kissing a man at the door. Rachel and the man walking out together, hand in hand, smiling. The worst one, Rachel and the man entering James and Rachel's house, the house where James paid the mortgage, where he kept his memories, where he'd built an entire life based on lies. Who is he? James asked, his voice calmer than he expected. Marcus flipped a photo. According to my sources, his name's Dylan Mercer. Works at your company. Haven't confirmed his exact role yet, but he has access to the building. James felt his blood freeze in an entirely new way. Dylan Mercer. The company's minority partner. The man James had personally helped hire 2 years ago. The man with access to internal systems, to code, to confidential projects. Dylan knew Rachel from company parties and corporate events. James had introduced them himself. "There's more," Marcus continued, turning another page. "I noticed a pattern. Every time they meet at your house, Dylan leaves with a folder or a laptop. Seemed odd for an affair. So I dug deeper." Marcus slid over a printed sheet. "Dylan Mercer has serious debts. Lost a lot of money on bad investments over the last 2 years. Creditors are breathing down his neck." James picked up the sheet and read. "Lawsuits. Debt collection notices." Dylan was financially drowning. And now it all made a terrible kind of sense. "He's using Rachel," James said aloud, voicing what his mind had already concluded. "To access our systems. To steal proprietary code." Marcus nodded slowly. "Plausible theory. Can you tell if anything's been accessed improperly?" James was already opening his laptop. He remotely accessed the company's access logs using his admin credentials. Ironically, James had noticed some anomalies in the logs weeks earlier, logins at odd hours that he'd chalked up to automated tests or late-working developers. Now, looking with targeted suspicion, the pattern was obvious. Dylan's logins outside business hours. Downloads of critical files from the current project, the very project James was working on in the mountains. Attempts to access financial folders. All within the past 6 weeks, always timed to coincide with the meetings Marcus had documented. "That son of a bitch," James whispered. "He's selling our code. Probably to competitors." Marcus crossed his arms. "What are you gonna do?" James slowly closed the laptop. His mind raced at full speed, assembling a plan with the same precision he used to debug faulty code. He wasn't impulsive. He wasn't violent. But he was meticulous, strategic, and now absolutely determined. "I'm going home early," James said. "Tomorrow night, Friday. Rachel said the house would be free until Friday. I'll give her exactly that." He paid Marcus generously and requested copies of all the evidence. Back at the cabin, James told his team he had to deal with an urgent family emergency. They could finish the project remotely. Nobody questioned it. James packed his bags, saved all his work to the cloud, and drove back to town Thursday morning. He arrived home around 8 Thursday night, knowing Rachel would still be at work. The house was spotless, too spotless, actually, as if someone had gone out of their way to erase traces. James locked himself in his office and spent the night documenting everything. He downloaded Dylan's access logs, arranged Marcus's photos in chronological order, took screenshots of the suspicious download records from bank statements. He prepared a complete dossier, evidence of both the affair and the corporate espionage. Then, James discreetly installed a small security camera in the living room, the kind his own company developed systems to protect. Technically, recording inside his own home was legal, especially given his suspicions of criminal activity. He'd quickly checked Colorado state laws to be sure. The camera was tiny, nearly invisible, and streamed directly to his phone. If Rachel and Dylan showed up tomorrow, he'd have it all on tape, admissible evidence for both the divorce and the corporate case. Friday morning, James sent Rachel a message: "Change of plans, love. Project got delayed, won't be back until Sunday now. Sorry. Love you." Her reply came almost instantly: "Ah, that's a bummer. But that's okay, I know it's work. Take care. Love you too." Lies so natural. So smooth. James imagined Rachel smiling as she read the message, relieved she'd have more time with her lover. Maybe she'd even forwarded it to Dylan right away. James spent the day at a nearby hotel, monitoring the house through the camera feed. Rachel got home from work around 6. She changed clothes, putting on a dress James recognized. It was his favorite, or used to be. Watching Rachel get ready for another man in the dress she'd always reserved for special nights with James felt like a punch to the gut. At 7:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. Dylan walked in. Tall, neatly groomed, confident smile. James had considered him a friend. They'd had beers together, discussed business strategies, celebrated professional wins. And now Dylan was kissing Rachel in James's own home. James watched it all on his phone. They sat on the couch. They laughed. They drank wine, probably the expensive bottle James had been saving to celebrate the project's completion. Their intimacy was obvious, natural. This wasn't something new. It had been going on long enough for them to feel comfortable, relaxed, unhurried. About an hour later, Dylan opened a backpack and pulled out a laptop. He showed Rachel something on the screen. She looked hesitant, asking something James couldn't hear. Dylan responded with reassuring gestures, touching her shoulder, flashing that fake confident smile. Rachel nodded, still uncertain, and picked up her phone to make a call. James couldn't hear the words, but he could see everything. The camera angle caught the exact moment Dylan showed her the screen, lines of code, technical documents. She was helping, yes, but her body language suggested she didn't fully grasp the gravity. Dylan had clearly convinced her it was something minor, maybe just sharing info or innocent collaboration. Her naivety didn't make her innocent, but it explained how Dylan had manipulated the situation. James turned off his phone. He had everything he needed. It was time. He drove the 15 minutes back to the house slowly, letting his anger settle into cold determination. He parked on the street, not in the garage, to avoid making noise. He used his front door key and opened the door silently. Laughter came from the living room. James walked down the hallway, each step measured, controlled. He turned the corner and stopped at the entrance to the living room. Rachel saw him first. She was sitting next to Dylan on the couch, laptops open on the coffee table. Her face went instantly pale. All the color vanished. Dylan turned a second later and froze. James? I thought, you said Sunday. Rachel stood up quickly, stumbling over her own feet. James didn't move. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, expression completely neutral. The silence in the room was deafening. Plans changed, James finally said, voice calm. You know how it is. Projects. Always unpredictable. Dylan slowly closed his laptop. Dude, this isn't what it looks like. James laughed, a short, dry laugh with no humor. Dylan. Please. Don't insult me further. You're drinking my wine, sitting on my couch, with your laptops open reviewing code you stole from my company. So tell me, what exactly does it look like? Rachel took a step forward, hands trembling. James, let me explain. Explain what, Rachel? James kept his tone calm, almost conversational. Explain the message you accidentally sent a week ago? We'll have the house to ourselves, love. Or would you rather explain the 6 weeks of documented meetings? Or maybe you'd like to explain why you're helping your boyfriend commit corporate espionage? The word boyfriend dripped with venom. Rachel recoiled as if slapped. Dylan stood up, trying to regain some composure. Look, James, we can handle this like adults. Adults, James repeated, tasting the word. Adults. Funny you'd use that term, Dylan. Adults don't steal from their own company. Adults don't betray their partner's trust. And adults certainly don't sleep with their friend's wife in his own house. The words cut sharply, each one chosen to wound. James rarely spoke with this kind of hardness, and the shock on Rachel's face was clear. You're in debt, Dylan, James continued, stepping into the room. $500,000 lost on bad investments. Lawsuits. Creditors at your door. So you figured, why not steal the company's proprietary code, sell it to the highest bidder, and use the partner's wife as your little helper? 2 problems solved, money and entertainment. Dylan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. James turned to Rachel. And you? You knew, didn't you? It wasn't just some fling. You were actively helping him steal from me. Rachel was crying now, tears streaking her carefully applied makeup. James, I swear, it wasn't supposed to be like this. It started as. I don't even know how to explain. I felt so alone, and he was there, and. Alone, James interrupted. You felt alone. In 12 years of marriage, you never once mentioned feeling alone. You know when you should have mentioned it? Before sleeping with my business partner. Before helping him commit crimes that could destroy the company I built. James, please. Rachel took another step, reaching out her hand. James stepped back. Don't touch me. Ever again. He looked between them, letting the silence weigh heavy. Finally, James pulled his phone from his pocket. You must be wondering how I know all this. Let me clear that up. He opened the photo folder and started swiping. Private investigator. 48 hours of surveillance. You weren't exactly discreet. Rachel covered her mouth with her hands. And before you think about denying the intellectual property theft part, James continued, opening another app, I've got access logs. Every file you downloaded, Dylan. Every folder you tried to break into. Timestamps, IP addresses, everything. You're a terrible hacker, you know that? Left trails everywhere. Dylan sank heavily onto the couch. Shit. Shit is one way to put it, James agreed. Federal prison for corporate espionage is another. Civil lawsuit for breach of contract and violating your non-compete clause is a third. And divorce for adultery with photographic evidence and an investigator's testimony is the cherry on top. Rachel sobbed loudly. James, I never meant to hurt you. I still love you, I swear. Shut up. James's voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare say you love me. Love doesn't do this. Love doesn't betray. Love doesn't conspire. Love doesn't lie every single day while looking someone in the eyes. You have no idea what love is, Rachel. He put his phone away and crossed his arms. Here's what's going to happen now. Dylan, you have exactly 24 hours to submit your resignation. Not a voluntary quit, termination for admitted cause. You'll sign a document confessing to attempted intellectual property theft. In return, I won't send the evidence to the FBI. Yet. If you fully cooperate, including naming who you plan to sell the code to, I might consider not filing criminal charges. Might. I'm not promising anything. Dylan nodded quickly, his face ashen. James turned to Rachel. And you? You're leaving this house tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Take whatever you can fit in one suitcase. The rest will sort through lawyers. I've already filed for divorce online. You'll be officially served on Monday. Proven adultery, emotional damages, complicity in corporate crime. You won't see a cent beyond what the law minimally requires. And if you try to fight it, I'll make every photo, every message, every shred of evidence public. James, no. Rachel dropped to her knees. Please, we can talk, go to therapy, fix this. The suggestion of therapy sounded absurd given the circumstances, but James recognized it for what it was, pure desperation, denial, Rachel's mind grasping at any chance to reverse the irreversible. She still hadn't processed that no amount of therapy can cure betrayal combined with corporate espionage. Fix it? James looked at her with something that wasn't anger, wasn't sadness, but a cold indifference worse than either. You destroyed 12 years over a fling and a criminal conspiracy. There's no fixing it. Only consequences. He looked at Dylan. Get out of my house. Now. Dylan stood, grabbed his backpack with shaking hands, and headed for the door. He paused for a second, as if to say something, but James's look stopped him. The door closed behind him. Rachel remained on the floor, sobbing. James, I beg you. Get up, James said. Pack your bags. You've got 1 hour. Where will I go? No longer my problem. Rachel staggered to her feet and went upstairs. James could hear her crying above, opening drawers, closing doors. He stayed in the living room, staring at the still open laptops on the coffee table, evidence of betrayal and crime. His whole life reduced to digital files and incriminating photos. 50 minutes later, Rachel came downstairs with a suitcase. Her eyes were swollen, her face wrecked. She stopped near the door and looked at James one last time. I'm sorry, she whispered. More than you can imagine. James didn't reply. He simply opened the door. Rachel walked out, and the door clicked shut behind her. James locked every lock, including the chain. Then he walked through the empty house, looking at spaces that used to be filled with laughter, dinners, plans for the future. Everything felt hollow now, like a theater set after the lights go out and the audience leaves. He didn't cry. Not yet. There was work to do. In the days that followed, James moved with mechanical efficiency. He compiled the entire dossier on Dylan and presented it to the company board in an emergency meeting. The termination was immediate. More than that, the board decided to pursue criminal charges. Dylan tried to negotiate a deal, agreeing to reveal he'd been in talks to sell the code to TechCore, a rival company, in exchange for a reduced sentence. The info was enough to trigger an investigation into TechCore as well. The divorce was swift and brutal. Rachel tried to contest it, claiming she deserved half the marital assets. James's lawyers presented evidence of adultery and criminal complicity. Rachel dropped her challenge and signed the settlement. She kept the car, minimal savings, and her personal belongings. James kept the house, his company shares, and his dignity. Dylan faced criminal charges. He eventually accepted a plea deal, 3 years probation, a heavy fine, a 5-year ban from working in the tech industry, and full restitution to the company. Financially ruined and professionally blacklisted, Dylan disappeared from town. Rachel tried to keep her job at the marketing agency, but the story got out. Corporate small towns gossip fast. She was quietly ostracized, lost key clients, and eventually resigned. She moved to another state, trying to start fresh far from judgmental eyes and her ruined reputation. James threw himself into work. The Mountain Project was completed successfully and secured the company a valuable long-term contract. Without Dylan sabotaging things from within and without personal distractions, James focused on growing the business. The company grew by 30% the following year. But the nights were hard. The big, empty house echoed with heavy silences. James considered selling but refused. He wouldn't let Rachel drive him out of the home he'd built. Instead, he renovated, repainted walls, changed furniture, transformed the spaces until they no longer resembled the backdrop of his old life. It took 8 months before James agreed to go out for dinner with someone, a developer from another company he'd met at a conference. She was smart, funny, straightforward. Nothing happened that night beyond a pleasant conversation, but it was enough for James to realize that maybe, eventually, he could trust again. Maybe. 18 months after that mistaken text message destroyed his marriage, James was at his favorite cafe when he saw Rachel across the street. She looked different, thinner, shorter hair, less polished clothes. She seemed tired, aged beyond the time that had passed. She saw him too and froze. For a moment, they just stared at each other through the cafe window and the traffic between them. James could see the hesitation on her face, the urge to cross the street and say something. Maybe apologize again. Maybe ask for a chance to explain. Maybe just ask how he was. James took his last sip of coffee, left money on the table, and walked in the opposite direction. He didn't look back. Because the truth James had learned, the painful, expensive lesson that wrong number text had taught him, was that some betrayals don't deserve a second chance. Not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but out of pure self-preservation. Rachel had chosen Dylan over him. She'd chosen stolen money over integrity. She'd chosen easy lies over hard truths. And James had chosen to move on. Without looking back. Without regrets. Without her. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.